Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 183. And today in the show, Dan and I are recounting the highs and lows of our rut hunting vacations. One of us kills, one of us blows the best opportunity of the season, and we both share a lot of stories about the most exciting, stressful, maddening, thrilling, and ultimately marvelous times of year. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by Sitka Gear. And I'm sitting in a hotel room right now, and sitting next to me in the other bed is Josh Furter Hilliard. And we were trying to get him on the podcast with us, but he made things difficult. So it's just me and Dan. But that will be the only disappointment in today's podcast episode, because otherwise, well, that's not true at all, Dan. Actually, we're going to have some amazing stories of good things, and then some soul-crushing stories of bad things. Today is rut hunting stories. Just you and me recapping our rut vacations, and I don't know. Does that sound like something you're happy to talk about today?
Dude, I'm ready to talk. I'm good at talking. You know that.
You know, we were just talking about how you're also the brains of the operation, too.
Right. No, a lot of people look at me and go, that guy is good at moving stuff or like loading trucks. And what they don't know is I'm the brains.
You're also
Mark,
the brains.
You're the guy.
I'm the goatee.
Yeah, you're the goatee. What have you ever seen the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Oh yeah, I love it.
Where they have the conversation about no man, I'm the wild card.
I'm the wild card.
No. I want to be the wild card.
You're definitely Charlie in our group.
I'm the guy who goes into basements
kills
and beats
the rats.
Bats. Yeah. You have one job:
Sniffing
clean the
glue.
bathrooms and beat rats.
Yep, that's you. Oh man. So what were we going to talk about? The rut. Deer.
The rut. Yeah, deer. That's right.
Deer.
I forgot what this podcast was about for a second.
That's usually what we talk about. Okay, so yeah, today, since everybody really is in the midst of marathon hunting right now, figured rather than try to bring some guest on, we should just talk about what we've been doing, because I know both of us have been in the woods a lot, and we both have a lot of news to share. But I don't know. Do we want to start with the good news or the bad news, Dan?
Well, I tell you what, I got a lot to say. So why don't we start with you? I want to find out about this slipping through the fingers thing that you mentioned, and let's talk about Holyfield and your journey right now.
Okay. But before we do that, let's take a quick break to thank our partners at Sitka Gear. And today, rather than sharing a Sitka story like we usually do, I actually just wanted to give you a heads up about a video I recently produced all about my own Sitka Gear whitetail system. I get dozens and dozens of emails and questions about, what kind of Sitka gear do you wear, which items do you wear at which times of year, why do you like this piece but not that piece, etc., etc. So I finally put together a video that details all of that. So go over to the Wired to Hunt YouTube page, and you're going to see there within the Wired to Hunt weekly playlist, you're going to see a video there that's titled Reviewing My 2017 Sitka Gear Whitetail System. And in that, I go through all the pieces of clothing that I wear, why I wear them, why I like them, at what times of year I wear what, and a bunch of stuff like that. So check it out to learn some more about what I'm wearing as far as Sitka gear. And if you'd like to learn more about Sitka gear for yourself, possibly try some yourself, you can go to sitkagear.com. And now let's get back to my story. So the story of Holyfield and where I am right now. Last time we chatted on the podcast, it was after the Holyfield question mark incident. Remember that?
Yep.
So I had continued hunting, after that date. I think that day was that was Halloween, I think. That we had the question mark incident. A couple days later, 2-3 days later, I'd been hunting, hadn't been seeing much, had started to see some younger bucks chasing around, things like that. But fast forward to, I think it was November 3rd, maybe? November 3rd, November 4th. And I went back to the same stand for the first time since I'd been there Halloween, to that stand again. And this is a morning hunt, though. And around like 9:30 in the morning, I look across the food plot into this area of cover, the exact same place where I'd seen Holyfield on Halloween, where I thought I'd seen Holyfield. And actually, I'm going to take a step back. There's a long-standing joke with me and a couple of my friends that whenever I take a leak off the tree stand, it attracts deer. So you know the story of Six Shooter. I was peeing, and then he showed up, and I shot him. And then a few years later, I was filming Furter hunting in Ohio, and he's just cracking up over here every time I say his name. I was filming him, and it was like the middle of the day. I'm like, hey man, I gotta take a leak, so I'm probably gonna have a big buck show up. And as I'm taking a leak off the tree stand, a big like 140 class 8-pointer shows up. Well, that happened again. I'm taking a leak, and I happen to look over my left shoulder, and I see movement in the brush over there, and I'm like, holy crap, that's Holyfield. Pulled up my binos, and he was basically in the same place he was Halloween, but this time he was heading the other direction, and I just got binos on him, confirmed, like, yeah, for sure, that's him, and then I'm reaching for my bow and grabbing my stuff, and then he slips back in the cover. I try grunt, I try snort wheeze, but I could never see him again. He just disappeared. Yeah. So I'd now seen him in the same spot twice in 2 hunts from this little area. So at midday, I went back to my house. I got a tree stand and sticks, and I decided to go in there and hang a stand. So it'd only be a move of like 60 yards just to the other side of this food plot. But I went, hung a new stand in there, and this is right on, like, very near the property line. So I just have a very small sliver of woods. It's a big chunk of timber, but my property only goes into like 20 yards in there, 30 yards in there. But he had passed on my side of the line when he came through those 2 times. So I set up in there for the afternoon hunt. It was gonna be a rainy day, so it started pouring rain, and I was just underneath my tree umbrella trying to stay dry. And long story short, on that sit, I noticed a doe coming across the field, and she had that look about her. You know how that is when she's kind of looking back over her shoulder, her tail's flicking and stuff. I'm like, yeah, gotta be a buck. And then I pull my binoculars, kind of scanning from the doe back behind her, and then bam, out of the tall grass, big rack, and there's Holyfield.
Yeah.
And he comes out of this brush and then bounces towards her, and then they run across the way into some more brush. So that was another quick encounter. How
close was he at that point?
Probably 100 yards maybe, something like that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
again, on the neighbors. And then they disappear. So I'd seen them that morning, and then I saw them that night, but it was quick. Now, I hunted the rest of the night, pouring torrential rain. The next day was going to be like the mid-60s and thunderstorms all day. So I actually took that day off from hunting. The first day I took off after 12 straight days of hunting. Took a day off to deal with some stuff at home and just get caught up on some things that I had not been attending to. Figured if I have to take off a day of crazy torrential downpours and thunderstorms would be the day to do it. So I took the day off. I think that was November 5th. So then November 6th comes back, and I said, all right, I'm going to go right back to that same stand. So I go back in that morning to the new stand I'd hung, and I don't know, an hour or two into the sit, after seeing some young bucks bumping around and stuff, same kind of thing happens. I see a doe coming across this sort of grassy, brushy clearing, watching the doe, boom, there's Holyfield again. But this time he's kind of hanging back. He's maybe 50 yards behind the doe, and the doe moves off and heads into the brush, and then he kind of is just standing on the edge of this kind of brushy opening, looking around, and then he starts heading my direction. And this is the first time I got footage of him all year, the first time I actually had time to get the camera on him. So I got some pretty good footage of him coming across this opening, and he gets to within maybe 70 yards, maybe, and then he turns to head north. He kind of had been angling like he was going to come my way, but he didn't. He turned and started heading directly away from me, sort of back towards the general area that doe went. At that point, I grunted once to him. He stopped and looked right at me. Looked for a couple seconds.
Yeah.
And then turned and started walking, continuing the way he went. So I'm like, all right, well, let me try a snort wheeze. So I snort wheezed once. He turned. I'm trying to remember what he did. He either turned and looked at me for a half second, or maybe he didn't turn at all. All I remember for sure is he bounced away. He bounded away from the snort wheeze. Maybe like 2-3 bounds, stopped, turned, looked back in my direction, and then turned back and then walked / jogged straight away into the cover and disappeared. So that was that morning.
Man.
Kind of bummed about that because now that he didn't like something that came from this direction, so I'm thinking to myself, well, it's probably unlikely that he's going to come this way now today. He obviously does not react well to calling. I hoped that this year he might be even more, that type of grumpy old dominant buck that maybe would react the right way to that, but he didn't. I tried calling to him a couple days beforehand, and I couldn't see his reaction because he disappeared in the brush. So I don't know how he reacted to it, but he definitely didn't come in. And now this time I saw him kind of spook from him. And now when I look back to last year, I tried calling to him at different times and never had success either. So now I've kind of seen in my head, okay, he's just not, there's too many other hunters around here. He's heard too many things. He's had too many bad experiences, I think. I just don't think that's going to work on him. So I'm sitting there thinking about, okay, I got to change things up tonight. And then I happen to catch a little flicker off in the distance, pull up my binos, there's a doe. I'm looking at the doe, and she's like, it's like 11:30 or noon by now, and she's just kind of standing on the edge of this cover. And, I feel like whenever I see a doe that's not doing something on purpose, like she's just kind of standing there awkwardly, kind of just looking around but not moving, not feeding. It's just that look of that. This kind of looks like a doe that's, with a buck. So I just start meticulously scanning all the brush around her. She's kind of standing on the edge of, I'm not sure what this is. Maybe it's like a what do you call it? Russian olive bush or something like that. Is that a thing?
Could be.
Something like that.
Sounds good. It sounds professional.
So she's standing by a bush.
Right.
And,
okay, good.
And I'm scanning. Then all of a sudden I see a little flash of light, and I focus in my eyes there, and then I can pick out what looks like a curving tine, and the more I look at it, I see a glimmer of white, and then I see a flicker of an ear, and then all of a sudden, it's like you're looking at like one of those. Do you remember those books as a kid? These 3D books where you look at this image, and then if you stared at it the right way, all of a sudden this 3D image appeared out of it.
Oh yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah.
kind of what this was. Like, you couldn't see anything, but if you just stared at it long enough and you kind of start picking things out, all of a sudden the silhouette of this rack appeared. And I realized that it was Holyfield bedded there with this doe. This was about 150 yards maybe.
Okay.
And so he's bedded with his doe about 150 yards away, and I watched him for maybe 2 hours there with the doe. Every once in a while, he'd stand up, he'd take a leak, he'd make a rub, he'd bed back down. He'd get up, he'd walk around in a circle, he'd bed back down. It was just really cool to get to watch him in that kind of setting and see
Completely relaxed.
Yeah, completely relaxed, just bedded, doing his thing. And then I'm sitting there debating, okay, what should I do tonight? My thought process was, okay, I think he's with this doe. He's going to go wherever this doe takes him. But based on the fact that he heard something over here this morning that he didn't like, I'm thinking it's pretty unlikely he's going to come this way. But I can see him right now, so I don't really want to leave when I can see him. But at the same time, I don't feel great about his chances of coming this way.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there thinking about all this, and I'm thinking that most of the activity I'd been seeing in the evenings had been moving off to the west. So, man, I got the freaking hiccups. I always have the hiccups when we record podcasts for some reason.
I think it's nerves. You're still not used to this.
Yeah, that might be it. This is very nerve-wracking for me. So I'm thinking in my head, I think I want to move up to the far western stand up there where most of my encounters of them have been. But is that stupid to leave while I've got eyes on him? Well, it ended up helping me make that decision because at maybe 1:30, he got up and walked away and went out of sight.
Yeah.
So at that point, okay, I can't see him anymore. I don't think there's a good chance of him coming over here because something spooked him, and I think there's a better chance that if that doe is going to head in any given direction, I think she's going to head towards the west because that seems to be where most of these deer are transitioning out towards. So
Right.
I sneak out of that stand, sneak up to the front of the property, get into the new tree stand, and within an hour of being in the new tree stand, I spot Holyfield.
Man.
Heading this way. And now he's not with a doe, though. He seems to be back on the hunt. So he lost that doe, or maybe, I don't know, maybe he wasn't even bedded with that doe. Maybe he had bedded down. I just happened to see her. And because I never saw her after, like, I saw her, and then I found him, and then I could never see her again. I just could see him for the 2-hour period. So I don't know what happened, but he was not with her anymore. But now I see him chasing a doe, and then this other really nice buck, this 3.5-year-old that I've been calling Survivor, because I'm trying to will him to survive this year. Like, I'm trying to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. He was chasing does and all these young bucks, and they're all bomping around this cover. This is back in that same cover where I saw him all the time last year. Again, this is on the neighbors. And I'm watching this happen, and then they disappear, and then it's getting, I don't know, maybe it's hour and a half before daylight, and some does are coming out, and I notice 3 does walking in towards my stand, which is in this food plot on the edge of this bedding cover. And I'm watching the 3 does come in, and I'm like pressing myself up against the tree, making sure like I'm as tight as I possibly can to stay hidden, and then I catch a glimpse behind him. And then out of the brush steps Holyfield, like 65 yards away, heading right into the food plot. I'm like, holy crap, here he comes. There's does in front of him. He's going to follow these does in, and it's going to be the easy shot I've been hoping for.
Yeah.
So I grab my rangefinder, make sure that's handy. I pull my bow off the hanger. I'm getting all ready. And he's walking like he's going to come in, and then just before he gets out of the cover, he stops, and he turns like a hard right turn, and cuts back into the cover and disappears into it, and he ends up, I didn't know this at the time, but he ends up paralleling the food plot through the cover, and he pops up, there's another opening, I saw him pop out, and then he walks behind me, sort of, but this is all neighbor's property still, and then I watch him, 70, 80, 90, 100 yards, kind of angling back and behind me, then cuts into this timber again and disappears. But I thought, like, wow, it was really close, I got the pump, I was excited, but again, I think that those does I think he was following those does and then realized that they weren't in heat, and then he moved on to go look for some others.
Yeah.
So, were you going to say something?
Do you think that on your tree stand where you've been hunting, because you have limited tree stand locations on this property, right?
Yes, very.
So, and you're hunting a lot. Do you think he's coming through your area after dark and he knows where your tree stand locations are at and he avoids them, not necessarily avoids the whole property, but avoids your tree stand locations because he's got a whiff and he knows that something could be over there, so he's not going to go check it out in daylight?
Yeah, I've definitely thought that a lot and wondered about it a lot.
I have this theory, and there's no scientific fact to back it up, but I have this theory that deer, especially like mature deer, can use their nose to tell time based off of the potency of the scent that they smell.
Oh yeah.
And that means like if they walk through an area and they get a real stiff, oh shit, something's close, I got to get out of here. Or if they catch this scent and they're like, okay, well, it's not very potent, and I think it's been 2 hours or whatever. They can't tell time, but it's not a threat. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
No, I know.
So yeah. So do you think he's coming through after dark in somewhere in those locations?
So I'm sure he does. I mean, I get pictures of him in these places, and I definitely have thought many times, like, this buck knows that I'm hunting him. He knows where I hunt him at, and he's avoiding these places. So I've tried to change things up more and more, but I'm just very limited because I can't ever get eyes on him or see him except for on the edge of this bedding cover. And the only places I can hunt him are like a couple trees. Like literally, it's not even, because again, the two spots up towards the front, there's literally only 3 trees I could hunt from there. I've got trees and I've got stands in 2 of them. And then the one of them is right smack dab in the middle of those 2, and would be tough to hunt with a given wind, because I can hunt one of these trees with a southerly wind, I can hunt one of these trees with a northerly wind. The other one's right in the middle. It kind of isn't good for any wind because too many deer come out above and below it. So I've I don't have a good solution. I've at this point, my hope coming into the season was that I would stay out. I didn't hunt it at all October.
Right.
And my hope was that, okay, if I don't hunt this area at all until I go in for the kill, late October, then he hopefully won't avoid it, and the does won't avoid it, and I'll get he'll come in, and that just didn't work out. He didn't come in at all, during all of that period.
But it doesn't sound like the deer are avoiding it, right? So, do you feel that your access is good, and that the pressure that you're putting on this property is still what you would consider low?
Not after what I've been doing here. Not after this rut period. I mean, I've just been going. I mean, I kept it as low as I possibly could until October 25th, and at that point it was okay. Now it's time to kill this buck, and so I was hunting it's go time. I told myself I got to kill him at this time period, otherwise I probably won't get a chance. So, been hunting him hard and trying to get in and out as best as possible. But it's a tough place to hunt. It's a tough place to access because of how it's set up with all these fields on the outside. So now I know I've made an impact, but I'm minimizing it as much as possible. I've created a path that I can get into sort of in the mornings to stay away from the fields. I get picked up in the evenings by my wife on a 4-wheeler or my pickup truck so that I'm not walking out. Instead, she spooks them off. I think those things help me. I mean, it's definitely not as bad as it would be if I was walking in and out on my own. But I'm sure, after hunting, what is it? Today's November 8th or 9th, and I started hunting that property October 25th, and I hunted it almost every day since trying to kill this stupid buck.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to change things up though. So I hung this new stand this summer to hunt with southerly winds. So I'd never hunted there before. I haven't seen him from that stand this year yet, but I saw him from it last year when I hung a hang and hunt there once. And then, like I told you, after seeing him a couple times, I hung a new stand, and then I saw him there a couple times from that. I saw him when he bedded and all that. That was a new stand. So where does that take us to? take us to, so we were talking about there was the food plot night. He looked like he was coming in, but he didn't. He paralleled and then went to this other section. That takes me to the next morning. So I've now seen him 2 days in a row, morning and evening both. And now I'm thinking, okay, I've seen him 5 times in 3 sits. It's all in the same little tight area, like a 10, 15 acre little block. But I didn't have a good wind direction to hunt. Well, basically, there's no good morning stands around there either, because it's all field edge sort of stuff, or not all field edge, but relatively open. But I'd hung a new stand this summer just for this kind of situation. Again, like I told you, I've got a little bit of timber on the far back side of this little core area of his. I usually don't see him in there this time of year, but I knew it was in that basic neck of the woods. Now this year, I had been seeing him more. Most of my encounters had been towards the back this year, unique compared to every other one. So I had this new stand hung back there. I thought, all right, I'm going to go back in there. Even though he's been up in the front, last night and the last 2 nights, I'm going to try here in the back. Maybe he'll cruise through here in the morning. It's tucked in back behind this food plot, maybe like 60 yards into the timber from this food plot, and I've got doe bedding areas on either side of me. One to the northeast, one to the southwest, and I'm back in the timber there. I thought there's a decent chance of seeing something happen there. So this is Tuesday morning, I think.
Yeah.
And I get in there. Good start to the morning. I see a survivor, my 3.5-year-old chasing does. I see some 2-year-olds chasing does, 1.5-year-olds all over the place, does running around. It's going good until about 9 o'clock. And then 9 o'clock, it just shut off.
Yeah.
From 9 to 10. From 9 to 10, it was really quiet, nothing going on. From 10 to 11, really quiet, nothing going on. But I'm sitting all day. And I should say, like, all these days I've been hunting all day. Man. It's like 11 o'clock, and as any of us would do, middle of the day, I'm looking at my phone every once in a while, and, I hadn't seen anything in 2 hours. I've got my phone pulled up. I was reading a book, actually, and I look at my phone, look up, scan around, look down at the phone for a few seconds, look up, scan around, but I had stood up because I'd been sitting all morning and my legs needed to stretch, so I was standing up. There's kind of a light breeze, and then my head was right next to my ozonics unit because I was standing.
Yeah.
So I'm facing one direction, and because of that, I can't hear very much. Looking at my phone, look up, look at my phone, look up, and I hear a twig snap behind me. I spin my head around to look, and there's a deer at 20 yards away. But right as I spin, he turns and bounds away and starts running away.
He saw you move?
Yeah, he saw me move when I spun around. He was at 20 yards, and I look at this deer, and I realized it was Holyfield.
Holy shit. I
had Holyfield at 20, 25 yards at 11 o'clock in the afternoon. Beautiful, perfect shooting lane, wide open, and I was looking at my stupid phone. And he ran off, and then he stopped like 70, 80 yards away, turned and looked back at me, and then started blowing, and then just slowly walking away, blowing the whole way.
Oh,
and
shit.
Yeah, I was just like crushed in that moment. Like,
and you called Furter and said, let's go to Ohio.
Pretty close to it. Yeah, man, I was so upset with myself.
Damn.
Like,
you shouldn't be upset, because if you were sitting down and had your head up and was paying attention, dude, I have had deer literally make no noise in certain scenarios. I take it the ground was soft because it had been raining up there. Mm-hmm. And these deer can come up underneath of your stand and you can't even hear them. So it's not like you did anything wrong.
I know. If I try not to play the what if game, but if I hadn't been on my phone and if I was just scanning like I'm usually doing, I would have seen him pop out of this cover behind me. I would have seen him just walking across this wide open timber I mean, walking right towards me. I mean, it's yes, it was a little bit unlucky that it happened to be the one time that I was standing up, not being able to hear anything with the unit next to my head and kind of soft ground, and all these different things led to a situation like that. But it was just that feeling, and I'd already been, how I was last year and how I am this year. This deer has kind of consumed everything. I'm constantly thinking about it. I was telling Furter the other day that I'm waking up in the middle of the night, like 2, 3 in the morning, and I just wake up and it's like where am I going to hunt with a southeast wind? And then I'm just sitting there, literally, like I wake up out of nowhere. My alarm hasn't gone off, and it's not like looking at the phone to see what time it is. It's just wake up and what am I going to do today? Where am I going to go? What's he doing? I mean, it's become like just kind of
obsession.
Yeah. And so I've put in so much work, so much energy, so much time over these last few years, and there it was. Like I had my opportunity. It was right there. And because I'm an idiot and I was looking at my phone and not focusing, I let it slip through my fingers. And, I probably will never get another. I don't know about this, but you don't get very many second chances on a buck like that where I'm at.
Yeah.
So I had a mental breakdown at that moment. I kind of broke down, was really, really upset. And then, after like a half hour, an hour of feeling sorry for myself and being pissed off at the world, then I said, all right, well, it is what it is. This is where you gotta, show that this is where you gotta kind of take that mental toughness and grit it out and push forward and move on and keep at it. So I knew he wasn't coming back to that tree stand that day, so I pulled down, moved back to another spot, again, the same couple spots I have that I can hunt up towards the front of the property. And not too long after, there he is, spotted him again. And he's chasing does, running around, and then eventually it looked like he locked onto a doe. And then for the most of the evening, for another like hour and a half, 2 hours, I'd watched him just like stand next to a bush and then slowly walk around the bush and then stand by the bush and then walk, and then the doe would squirt out of there, and then he'd follow the doe another 10 yards over. And that's what happened all night. He stayed back in that cover with that doe. And that was that. That was yesterday. And meanwhile, my buddies Furter and Corey had gone down to Ohio. And I was supposed to go down to Ohio with them, but I'd been pushing it off, trying to kill Holyfield. And I don't know, I just had been stressing, and then this happened and everything. And I was like, you know what? I just need a change of scenery. I've been hunting this spot too much. Even though I'm seeing Holyfield, I kind of just need to get away from it for a little bit. So after the evening hunt last night, I drove down to Ohio and hunted here today. And just kind of recentering myself.
Yeah. Dude, I don't know if you want to hear this or not, but I think you need to throw that buck a curveball. I agree. I mean something that is, you don't plan it, you just do it. And I'm talking about sitting in a fence row on the ground or like where he is all the time that's not in your stand. And it's one of those things where it's almost like you have to have a conversation with yourself that's, am I willing to bust this buck off my property with such an aggressive move? Or I could, I call these I call them like 50-50 hunts. Sometimes I go in and there's a 50% chance it works, or there's a 50% chance I get busted based off the wind, a real hard quartering wind, or an access route, or, all these things that we try to be so fragile with that go into the strategy of hunting these deer. It's time to take a risk on one of those factors and throw a curveball at him and make him like go, I didn't expect that at all.
Yeah.
Because I think this buck has the one up on you right now.
Yeah.
From where you are sitting on your farm.
I mean, definitely at the front of the food or the front of the property, yes. Like I basically know that. I'm just leaning on the fact that one of these days maybe I'll get lucky enough that he's with a hot doe that he just can't leave, like he did that one time last year. But towards the back, I mean, yeah, I've got a few more options. He just doesn't come back there very often. But where I had my shot opportunity was from a stand that I had never hunted Well, I'd hunted it one other time this year, so it was the second time I hunted that stand, and he
Right.
passed by it, and then he passed by another spot on my property twice that I'd never hunted. It was about 60 yards away from a stand I had, but not
Yeah.
shootable from there. So when I get back from Ohio, I'm just going to stay down here for another day or two. So I'll be back to Michigan here soon, and I'll have a handful of days before gun season. I am going to just try some different stuff, because at this point, I've seen them 500,000 times. I know where I can sit and where I can see them, probably, but I don't really care about seeing him anymore. I just want to shoot him now. So at this point, might as well try something that, like you said, it's either going to not work at all, I'm not going to see him at all, or I could spook deer, or maybe it could be the switch up that'll work. So I'm going to focus a little more on the back of the property in the mornings. I've got 2 other stands in the back of these bedding areas that I have not hunted at all this year. I haven't had a wind that I could hunt them with, but I think I will have those winds coming up. So I'm going to try those.
Here's a random question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other bow hunters in your area right now?
Yes.
How close to you?
I don't know. I know there's one other property that has a crossbow hunter that's probably hunting weekends right now. That's, it's right next to the property, but from like the core area that I see Holyfield all the time, a couple hundred, 300, 400 yards from there. There's another small property that butts up to his little core area that I think has 2 different guys that bow hunt it, and I think that they might be hunting now. And then
do you think that, you've mentioned this before. You've mentioned that rattling doesn't work in Michigan, right? And you try, you do your grunting and your snort wheezing, but you don't rattle because it just, I don't know whether it's it has a negative connotation to these bucks. It scares them or whatever. But I think if next time you see him alone by himself, I think it'd be worth a try, dude.
I don't know. At this point, it's I can't. What were we gonna say? Sorry.
I was gonna say, do you really think? He just busted you in the tree stand.
Yeah, can't
right?
get any worse than that, right?
He's still in the area. That's
true.
Like he saw you visually, and he potentially busted you scent wise, maybe. Right?
Yeah, he didn't win me. He just saw me.
He didn't win you, but he did see you. Okay, that's good. So just rattling in general, I don't think if you have the wind right, I don't think it's going to hurt anything.
I think I tend to agree now. At least at this point, like I've already made an impact. Like, there's not much to lose now. So I rattled to him once last year, and he ran away from it. So that's why I've been so hesitant to do it. But at this
is he the
point,
dominant buck on the property?
He has to be. I haven't seen any other buck that's anything older than 3.5. There's one 3.5-year-old. There's a couple 2.5-year-olds. There's 17,000 1.5-year-olds. And then there's him. So you would think he's the dominant buck, but he does not. He has not shown any kind of positive reaction to any kind of call. So
decoy question mark.
Same kind of thing. There's so many does. I'll see 30 does a night. I just think that it would just be them blowing at it all night.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe it's worth trying something crazy because gun season's coming up soon, and at that point, all bets are off. Now here's the other thing though. If he can make it through gun season, I feel like I have a very, very good chance of killing him in these usual places that I hunt him. Because despite the fact that I hunt him in these places often, like more than I wish I would, now I haven't done it as much this year. Like last year I hunted these couple stands a bunch because I kept seeing him, so I kept hunting him. But this year I've had more stands hung for different situations, so I've only hunted the front stand 3 times, which is, you don't want to hunt much more than that.
Right.
And I hunted the back plot stand twice. So I've still kept it, a lot less than past. But what I'm trying to say is that in the late season, he throws caution to the wind when going to these food sources that I've got planted there. Both years, 2015 and 2016, I have like 10 to 15 days during the month of December that he visits those locations during daylight hours.
Yeah.
So if he can make it through gun season, and if I don't spook him at all during that time period, if I could let him, reestablish a sanctuary there, I do think I've got a very good chance of killing him once we get into December, and I can do get back to that drone strike approach, and just wait till the right conditions, go in there once, and hopefully kill him. But I also, at this point, you just don't know if he'll make it through gun season, so I'm kind of throwing caution to the wind right now because I need to try to kill him before, there's 60 guys in my little neck of the woods versus, 12 or 13 or whatever. So
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. It was very disheartening to have had that opportunity right there and to screw it up, but gonna keep at it, and we'll just see what happens. So
absolutely, man. That's like the most frustrating part, right? I've had a couple bucks in my lifetime that I've chased like you're chasing, and it is, man, it can be frustrating when you think you're doing everything right, and then it's like you miss an opportunity, or you feel like you're one step behind the entire time.
Yeah, that's hunting, all right.
That's absolutely hunting.
So the good thing is, though, every once in a while, all the hard work and time and energy, it pays off. And
absolutely.
I hear that happened for you.
Yeah, I tell you what, man,
Tell me about your rutcation. But before that, real quick now, we're going to hear from our partners at Whitetail Properties.
This week with Whitetail Properties, we are joined by Gabe Adair, a land specialist out of southern Iowa. And Gabe is going to be telling us about what the primary factors are that make for quality hunting ground.
There's a couple that stick out, I guess, the most. One would be neighborhood. I think you've got to have the structure around you. I've even seen, in my line of work, I've seen enormous farms struggle. When I say enormous, I'm talking 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 acre farms struggle if you don't have structure around you, like-minded neighbors, on the same program, or at least close to the same program. Everybody's going to have their differences, of course, but, I think you got to have, the right people around you to really get deer to that upper age class. And so I think that's first and foremost. And then that kind of leads into the second one where, depending on what you're after, you've got to be in the right area as far as genetics. You got to be where big deer are at. If you're in an area where your goal is to shoot 150-inch 5-year-old bucks, obviously there's a lot more places that a guy can get into something like that. But, definitely the second one would be if you're after top end, if everybody's wanting to shoot Boone and Crockett type animals, or even that new pinnacle that I deal with more and more every day is 200. I hear about it, deal with it, and see it way more. You've got to be where those animals even have a chance to be. And so, the two things I would say is obviously neighborhood structure around your property, and then your property's got to be in an area where it's gonna produce, or at least have a chance to produce what you're wanting to harvest.
If you'd like to learn more and to see the properties that Gabe currently has listed for sale, visit whitetailproperties.com/Adair. That's ADAIR.
Dude, I've had an amazing rutcation. I got into town Friday night after, I packed my stuff up. I got into town, and the family was in town. I mean, they came for Friday night, which was cool. And Saturday morning, so I'll just kind of run you through these last 5 days, or whatever, however many days. Day one, Friday night. And man, we've been having a ton of east winds, and I never plan for east winds this time of year, right? So I had no stands hung for an east wind. So I'm just like, okay, if I can't get into this bedding area that I want to get into, I'm going to set up down from it. And this field, this would have been the closest I hunted to a field edge all year, right? I was like 50 yards off this field edge, and so I could see into it. So I run and gun down in here. My wind is blowing almost straight east down into this creek, and I'm just set up in a good spot, ready to start seeing movement, like this, make the observation and then possibly move in. Mm-hmm. And so that night I get this, get the stand set up, and instantly I start seeing does, and young bucks running around chasing each other. The young bucks are chasing. Had a really good 8-pointer come up. I'd say he was a 2-year-old with a good rack, 8-pointer. I'd put him at about 120, 8-pointer, pretty cool. He walked by, a couple does walked by, some button bucks walked by. I was like, well, maybe this isn't going to turn out to be an observation set. Mm-hmm. They're coming off the bottom of this creek and they're working my way. My wind was blowing into the creek, but they were coming up the creek, like paralleling my wind, which was awesome. And I thought, well, geez, man, something, a lot of these deer bed in these creek, right? These timber thickets right on there. And I got the food source here. So maybe I'm actually in a good spot. Well, I see a handful of deer, and then all of a sudden I see this big buck in the field with his nose to the ground. And I pick up the horns because he was traveling like he was going somewhere, right? Nose to the ground, sniffing. I crack the antlers, or I wait for him to get into the timber. I put the antlers together, crack them hard, do this 1-minute rattling sequence, throw it out, and he is dead sprinting. Oh. I mean, he is hauling ass right to me.
Wow.
And he comes to the corner 50 yards away, and there's no shot there. But what that does, it gives me an opportunity to put my binoculars on him and check to see if he's mature. He's a 3-year-old. I'd say 150, give or take 5 inches on each side. Wow. Okay. So he ends up coming through, and he's 12 yards in front of me for, I don't even know for how many minutes. So he just was milling around looking for this fight. A couple does were coming up, so then he ended up turning around and chasing him. So I ended up passing this 150-inch 10-pointer, really good. It was just a combination of, I got the opportunity, and the reason I'm saying this is kind of foreshadowing for the ending of my rutcation, but I got the opportunity to observe him. I got the opportunity to look at, his body. The body said he's 3 years old. He's not a shooter in that department. He's got a great rack, but he's just not what I'm looking for on day one of my vacation. So had that encounter, more deer come in and out, and then some coyotes come up behind me, and they blow the field out, which was great because it was right at last light, and it gave me the opportunity to walk through the middle of the field back to my truck.
That's nice.
Saturday morning, I decided, you know what? My family's here. I'm going to sleep in, and I'm going to hang with the family until they leave, and then I'm going to go out for that evening hunt on Saturday night. So Saturday night, so I play with the kids for a while, play with the family. They leave. I get ready. So I go to the timber pretty early. And for some reason, I said I got this northeast wind. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give this wind a shot in my best area. And I need basically a straight west wind for it. Typically, I hunted on a straight west wind. And I said, you know what? I think I've never tested this before, but I think that I'm going to go in to this tree stand that I have in there, and I'm going to let the wind, and I'm going to check the wind to see what it does. I have a feeling that it's going to go down the timber line just a bit where these deer come from. But I think as this creek kind of curves away, that creek is going to suck all the wind in and blow the wind down the creek. And sure enough, I was dropping those. I got into my tree stand, got set up. I had my access route was a little risky getting in, because if there was deer bedded in this thicket along the creek, my wind walking in would have went through it. You know, I spray myself down with nose jammer, you know. So I feel that if they're exposed to that scent, whether it's the nose jammer or me or a combination of it, for a very short period of time, they tolerate it, as opposed to, you know, if I was just standing there all night and letting my wind blow in there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I think they tolerated it for very short periods of time. I ended up bumping 2 does on this point across the creek from me on a different farm, but you know, it's real close. The property border is the creek. And so my wind does exactly what I thought it was going to do. It went down just a ways, but then it dropped hard into the creek and it just blew out the back of the creek, right, down to the property. So none of my wind was going anywhere where deer were walking, unless downwind they crossed the creek somewhere. You know what I mean? So I'm sitting there. I see like a couple small 10s come through, a couple small 8s, you know, some 2-year-olds basically are walking through. It's getting like 4:00 now. This is this is before the time change. Saturday night would have been the time change, so maybe it was 5. But I'm sitting there and I hear a branch crack behind me, and I turn around, and it's another big buck. I got trail camera pictures of him. He's a 10 with split brows. He's going to probably be in the low 150s as well. Just out to his ears, 10-pointer, decent mass. Wow. And he comes within 8 yards of my stand. And
so this is third day, third big 150 plus buck.
This is second day.
Oh, second day still. Sorry.
Yeah, second day. And because I hunted, my first day was Friday, right? And so I'm just going, oh man, I don't want my season to be over right now. I don't want it to be over. And I think he's a 3-year-old, you know, and you have these moments where if you have to question it or talk yourself into something, then I don't think it's a good idea to shoot it. Right. I want to shoot it because I want to shoot it, not because I'm talking myself into it. Yeah. So all these things were running through my head. I was like, you know what? I'm going to let him go. So I let him go. Right. I let him go. And so I'm sitting there and I look, and this is probably 10, 15 minutes after this buck leaves. I turn and I look in the field, and it's one of my hit listers at about 150, 200 yards, give or take. And he's in the field, head down, and I put my binos up. I'm like, who is that? Who is that? He puts his head up, kind of looks, scans the area, and I instantly know what buck it is. I pick the antlers up, and I just go boom as loud as I could. I mean, you rattle so hard that you can smell the antlers. You know, those kind of rattling sequences where you can smell the heat coming off from the friction. And he turns his body and he starts walking real slow right towards me. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to rattle in a mature buck. Like, that was the thought that crossed my mind. So he disappears behind some trees. I can't see him. This is 30 minutes goes by and he's closer, but he's taking his time and feeding, right? So he gets to the corner of this field and he starts to basically eat. So I throw out a snort wheeze at him, you know, and he pops his head up and he looks in, and he like, his ears don't go back, but he kind of, it's almost like he's throwing his shoulders up, like he's getting pissed. And like, who's in there? I know I beat everybody's ass in there. Who's trying to, you know, challenge me? And he like kind of walks in this big circle, but I don't know. You ever see a moose? You know, they walk with that big, you know, that big antler sway. Yeah, big antler sway. He's doing that out in the field to some other little bucks, like showing him his antlers. It almost looked like he's showing
do know
him,
what
like,
you're talking about. Yeah, the paddle sway. Yeah.
Yeah. So this buck's doing that out there, and the other bucks are kind of working their way away from him. Like, okay, this guy's means business. And then I do this grunting sequence, like another buck's tending a grunt, tending a doe, and they're like, bap, 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 Yep. And he looks in, almost like he knows he's going to go in there and do whatever he wants to anyway, so he's going to continue eating. 10 minutes pass of him eating at, I'm going to say inside 100 yards, somewhere between 80 and 100 yards. And he drops into this real thick stuff. I'm hunting some edge. And it kind of opens up in front of me. That's where all the sign is, but it gets real thick. Remember we talked about my property that they logged it a couple years ago?
Yep.
And now it's just thick and nasty back there. It's beautiful. And so he goes in there and disappears. And I'm like, where the hell did he go? Well, out of there pops another doe and a young buck chasing her, right? And he pops out again in the field, right? And he's running down, or he's not running, he just steps out. The other buck chases this doe away. The doe's running away, and he lets this young buck, like he knew she wasn't ready to breed yet, maybe. That was my assumption. Well, this big buck comes back into the timber right where he left and then disappears for 15 minutes. I hear a branch break in the creek behind me, and there's a doe, and I look further down the creek, and there he is. And he's coming right at me with this doe. And we go through this. The doe, I'm speeding this up, but the doe walks into the shooting lane, walks by it down into the creek, and he does the same thing. And he stops to smell where she's at, and I draw back, anchor, pin on, pull the trigger, and I'm just like, it's like when these guys shoot the 3-pointers and they know it's in, they just turn around and walk away.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Did you turn around and walk away mid-shot?
Yeah, I looked back at the camera that wasn't there, and I was like, nailed it.
Smoked him.
I was that confident that this buck was going to get hit by my arrow. Like I knew it.
How far of a shot was it?
It was 28 yards.
Okay.
28 yards, completely broadside down in a creek. And then in that moment, we're talking in a matter of a second. I go from confident to what the hell just happened, because now I don't see my knock leaving. I see my broadhead, and then my arrow turns sideways. I glanced a very, very small branch that was in the way that I couldn't even see until I was like, what the hell happened? So I picked the binoculars up, and I see this. It's the tiniest, littlest branch there, and my arrow hit it and just like started tail spinning. And this buck pops up on top of the creek, and now he's at 40. And I'm just like, what the hell? And I launch another arrow, and I rush the shot and everything. And it was not, I should have never taken it, but it was a complete miss, right? Shanked that shot. And I kind of went through in that 24 hours, I went through what you went through. Like, oh my God, I just missed the biggest buck of my life.
Yeah.
Or, it wasn't necessarily my fault, but it was my fault because I didn't see the twig. I should have seen the twig. I didn't see the twig. The twig affected the shot, and I got 150, 160 class 5-year-old 8-pointer that is gone. Right. And he showed up on trail cameras the next couple days, but I was, let's say the next day he showed up, I was back in that same tree stand to the south because I had it was a southeast wind. So the wind was blowing right into where he would have been coming from. So I can't hunt that, that's just dumb. You can't take a risk like that. So I bounced that was Saturday night. Sunday morning, I get up and I go to a completely different part of the farm, and I sit there. See, today's Tuesday, right? We're recording this on a Tuesday
Today's
or
Wednesday. Actually.
Today's Wednesday. So I'm trying to think of what I did, but for Friday, let's see, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I saw shooters the entire time. Let's see, Sunday morning, I get into the timber. Was it Sunday morning? Yeah, Sunday morning, I get into the timber, and it is perfect. You know, I set this tree stand up in a pinch point, money, wind's blowing exactly. It's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. And the deer are starting to move through this pinch point, like a couple does, 2 young bucks. And all of a sudden I catch some movement out of my left eye. And there is another shooter.
Oh, my gosh,
like,
man.
A 9-pointer. I'm going to say 160. 9-pointer. Wide, huge 9-point. And I'm just like, what the hell?
Where are you hunting? Are you hunting in Iowa or something?
Yeah. I don't know. Like the farm was just loaded this year.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
Every once in a while you'll get that. In here where I live, I guess anyway. But you know, like I turn around and he's got his nose to the ground. He's looking. So I'm like, okay, brap, brap. And he keeps walking, brap. And he puts his head up, looks my way, but he must have been on a doe that I didn't see. I throw the antlers together and rattle it. I'm like, he's just going to come over. I just know it. And then boom, in the timber, gun goes off.
Oof.
Somebody shot a single shot in that. And I'm just like, oh my God. Ruin, you know, like then the movement just shut off. Right. This is one of those stands that, you know, you wanted me to sit all day long to try to see what movement was coming in between 10 and 2 o'clock. And I wanted to do it, but you know, I can't do that when guns are going off.
Can I pause your story here really quick?
Okay, go.
For just a brief interlude about that very topic. Just want to mention my Holyfield shot opportunity, 11 o'clock. Our buddy, our mutual friend Dustin, he killed a buck at 2:20 in the afternoon a couple days ago, and we just pulled trail camera cards in Ohio, and 2 different shooters on trail camera at 12:30 in the afternoon and 1:30 in the afternoon. So just a reminder for everyone out there, midday sits can be really good this time of year. That's all. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
No, you're good, man. You're good. That's a great point. Great point. Except I hate hunting midday.
Yeah, I can't say I enjoy it either, but you know.
So then Saturday I went, or let's see, Sunday night after seeing that shooter, I had the wrong wind. You know, I wanted to get back down where I was getting all these trail camera pictures of the other bigger bucks, and you know, to try to get in on them again. Sat in the same 2 stands, and I think that my access and hunting there was starting to affect the maybe some of the deer movement a little bit. I mean, I still saw some great deer. The does were still there on Sunday evening, and then Monday morning I went back down there, and then Tuesday or Monday night I went back down there, and I bumped walking in to this one stand. I bumped literally 13 does out of their beds walking to the stand.
Ouch.
And I'm just like, well, the bucks don't have any reason to be here now. You know what I mean? Like, unless they're cruising, you know, I didn't even see what blew out of the back end of this bedding area. But, you know, so Monday was over. Tuesday morning, I was back in that same spot, hoping that, you know, that they'd filtered in. Sure enough, they came in. You know, I had a hot doe getting chased by 2 2-year-olds pretty heavily, and they were all over the place, right? So I had, you know, like 3 or 4 bucks came through before 7 o'clock, and then boom, neighboring property, gun goes off.
Good
I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, I just want to know what these guys are killing, you know, what they're killing with these guns. Yeah, exactly. Raccoon was in the barn, you know, like whatever. But okay, so anyway, so I'm having one hell of a rut already. I'm seeing great deer movement. I'm seeing great sign. My trail cameras are consistently showing these deer. But I think I'm putting too much pressure on the property.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought to myself, you know what? What the hell? I want to go to this new piece of property that I acquired. I didn't hunt any of it. I didn't hunt. I've been hunting on it twice, but it was like on the very north end of the farm. It's just easy access, and it was in early October when I hunted those. And I think I told you I saw like a decent buck at dark. I really couldn't tell what he was.
Yeah.
I was assuming I really couldn't tell what he was. So I said, you know what? Oh, and long story short, here's another interlude to that story. I was told I was the only bow hunter on there. All right. I go down in there on my second hunt, and I see a trail camera in a tree stand. So I obviously report that back to the landowner. I said, hey man, there's another tree stand. He's like, I'm calling the DNR. They're going to get this guy for trespassing, whatever. So he goes, I want you to go down there, take that tree stand down, and take that camera down and bring it back to the tree or to the house. I'm just like, oh man, I don't want to get involved in this. But if the landowner wants me to do it, I guess I'll do it. I go down there, and there's a guy sitting in the tree stand. So I go, come here. I say, come here. So he gets down, and I go, I don't want to get into any drama, but who are you? And he's like, my name's so-and-so, and I've been hunting here 9 years. And I go, 9 years? This guy doesn't even know who you are.
Oh, that's awesome.
So he's like, well, so the guy that I communicate with is the son-in-law to the property owner. The property owner is in a hospital because he broke his hip, right? And he's getting rehabbed out. So he's telling me like he's been hunting here for 9 years. Like, okay, I don't care. Like I got shit to do. I'll just go hunt on the different part of the farm, whatever. It's good. It's a decent farm. So that happened. So last night, I'm like, screw it. I have nothing to go on other than what I've learned over the years, right? Read sign, play the wind, play terrain, right? So I park my truck. I'm loaded up, run and gun style. We've done it 100 times. And I'm walking in, face to the wind, and the property lays kind of like a upside down L with a thick part of the bottom L. You know how there's a corner in there, right?
Yep.
And that corner is a very narrow logging trail, or like just enough for an ATV, and then it drops down into a ravine, and that ravine is just very thick. Like one of those things that if someone you let the new guy shed hunt that part of the farm because he's going to be on his hands and knees, So I'm walking in, I'm following these fence lines, and every overhanging tree, and I'm not exaggerating here, every overhanging tree on this field had a scrape in it, and it looked like they were fresh, right? I mean, just like it's tore up from scrapes, not huge rubs, but there was little rubs all along the field. And so I'm like, man, something's working in here, who knows what it is. So I got to find a way that my wind is not going to blow into this logging trail, but I can still hunt the top of this ridge, because my goal was to set up in a tree to where I was close enough to the thick stuff, hunting that edge. At the same time, I wanted to be looking into the valley to observe any motion on the opposite side of the ridge. That was because this ridge ran the entire length of the farm. So I wanted to make it an observation set, but I wanted to do it in a way that if a deer did come by through this thick stuff, because, deer don't typically work their way, they're not walking on the top of the ridge. Right, they're down off the ridge,
right?
So they can smell everything. But it was hard for me to hunt that, because I wanted my wind to not blow right down that edge. So if something did decide to hunt on the walk on the 2-track, that my wind really wasn't going to blow down there. So I came off just a bit. And it was one of those 50-50 hunts where I felt if something was going to come, and the wind shifted just a bit. I was screwed, but luckily it held true, and it blew out into this field, into the CRP field, and stayed there the entire night. So I was cut. It was literally like a 40-foot difference where my my wind trackers went when I was testing my wind. And sure enough, man, I sit up in this tree and immediately start seeing deer. It was like as soon as I clamped in, brought my bow up and hung it up, deer started moving. I saw, before the buck that I ended up shooting, I saw 5 bucks all within shooting range working this ridge. And I'm just like, wow. This is what I'm really proud of. I'm proud of the fact that I read sign, I read terrain, and I played the wind aggressively, and it allowed me to set up to catch deer movement and not get busted. That's an accomplishment for anybody. I don't care how seasoned you are or inexperienced you are. If you can do those 3 things and get close to deer, you're doing something right.
For sure.
Right? As far as a strategy standpoint, now shooting a deer is a whole different story. If you can do those things, you're going to get close to deer. Well, after these bucks work through, 2 does out of nowhere. There's no real ag. This is all timber. Like I think on the neighboring farm there might be some food plots, but I couldn't see any through my binoculars. It looked like they just had a huge disked up field. Like they harvested it and then overturned it. So there was nothing for them to eat. So, but there was plenty of stuff in the timber to eat. And 2 does come out of this bottom ridge or where the ridge kind of keeps going, comes up over top, did exactly what I thought they were going to do, drop off the ridge just a little bit as to not like skyline themselves. And they were working the thick stuff through, and they worked by me, and they were just like, they were in front of me eating on a bush for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And all of a sudden the doe pops her head up and looks down the ridge, and I couldn't see what she was looking at right away. And she puts her head up, and then all of a sudden I hear like some heavy movement coming through the timber, and she kind of notices something was coming at her and drops down, and I'm like, okay, there's a buck coming. And the 3 of those bucks had worked their way up that way, and I thought, well, maybe one of them's coming back. So I put my binos up, and I see movement, but I can only see from half of the deer up. So I can't see its legs. I can't see its whole body. I can see part of its head and antlers, because it's real thick, right? I look up, and I'm like, oh my God, I never saw this deer head on. I saw him broadside only, and I'm like, that is a big buck. Like the mass on his tines, I mean, he just looked huge. And then he starts working his way. I kind of lost him, but I knew he was coming. And then he intercepted those does, and those does went up the ridge. And he turned around and he followed those does up the ridge. And I'm like, well, I have no idea what this buck is. I need to get a better look at him. So I literally did this. That was it. And he stopped, and I could see his antlers swing around and look back at me in my general direction. And I saw him lick his lips, like how these deer get excited and they're drooling and they're just like, he licks his lips and he turns around and he comes to investigate. And I can't get a good look on him. Like the other 2 deer I passed this week, I was able to put my binoculars on them. I was able to get a good look at him, and I was able to say, you know what? That is not a shooter. I'm going to pass, right? I couldn't do this with this buck because he was in such thick cover. And then he's getting close, so I'm just like, oh man, I gotta make a decision here. And I couldn't tell. So I picked my bow up. I got ready to draw back. He's coming into an opening that's about 20 yards away, but that opening it's like a stretch where I just got lucky, I guess. And there was a shooting lane kind of naturally there, and it was thick, and his kind of antlers popped out, and I'm like, okay, that's a big buck. I draw back, And all of a sudden he steps out and he's my anchor point. I didn't really check his body like I probably should. He looked massive broadside from, in the antler department. And it was one of these decisions that I had to make in that one small opening that I had. And it was shoot him or lose him. Right. And I shot him. Right. And I drilled him. And he takes I hear the, and I hear all this air come out of him. Like he just got punched in the gut. And I'm just like, son of a bitch. Like I just gut shot him. And it was a little back, but it didn't seem too far back.
Huh.
And I'm just like, oh my God, I gut shot him, but he didn't run. So he kind of walked off very slow, about 15, 20 yards, and he stood there all hunched up, and I put my binos back on him, and not really like judging his body because of my adrenaline was pumping, but I was looking at his rack like, dude, that's a decent rack. That's a good rack. That is a good rack. And I just was like, I was happy. Right. I'm just like, oh my God, I just did it. I got that post-shot pump.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
Woo. And I started freaking out. I'm that guy who gets emotional when I harvest an animal, but I wasn't like 100% sure yet. And cause he's sitting there and he's going, ugh. And I didn't see any blood coming out of him. Right. Cause I didn't hit lung. I didn't hit heart. I was back behind the diaphragm on the shot. And he was kind of stretched out when I shot him. So when I shot him and he started walking, that skin came back from what it looked like over the hole in his ribs, and he wasn't bleeding very well because it was so far back, and that's what made me think I got guts. So he walks, he starts to make this half loop, and so I get another arrow ready. I'm like, oh, he might come back around, and I'm going to shoot him again. He's kind of coming up from behind me now, and then he gets that wide, his tail starts going. I'm like, uh-oh, that's not a good sign for him, right? And then he starts getting wide legs, right? When they're late, where he's trying to get a bigger base under him. And then he starts taking, then he starts losing his balance. And I'm like, dude, he is toast. He's toast. And he starts, then he gets back up again. And I'm like, uh-oh, what happened? Like then he postures up and he looks fine. And then that was it. He took these 3 wobbly steps. He laid down, put his head down, and then from the time I shot him to the time he expired was probably 3 minutes, 3-4 minutes. And I'm just like, oh my God, I just shot the biggest buck of my life. Right.
Yeah.
And I was pumped. I called my wife, I called my stepdad, I called my buddy Ben, and I was just like, I was texting people. I was like, oh shit, this is awesome. This is awesome. I'm happy. I'm excited.
Heck yeah.
I'm excited. And I'm still excited. And
I feel like there's a butt coming though.
A what?
A butt. Like you're building this all up like I was, but
no, and I am. Dude, I am. So, and I'm sure this has happened to a lot of people. I get down out of my tree stand and I walk over to the deer and I look at it and I'm like, the people use the term ground shrinkage, right?
Uh-huh.
This deer was not what I thought it was. Now, don't confuse that for me being unhappy with this. Don't confuse that with me being like, oh, I don't know, I only shoot big bucks, like that kind of shit. Don't get a negative connotation with that. This buck was not what I thought it was, but I am happy. I am thankful. I'm pumped. I'm still pumped that I shot this deer. It's just not what I thought it was when it was coming through the thick timber, right? I'm not trying to make excuses for it. I'm jacked. I'm happy. I got a buck at the taxidermist. I have a freezer full of meat coming. Everything that I did, and like I said to you, I'm very proud of this fact. I was able to run and gun, read sign, and be successful on a first hunt in. And I've never done that before, right? That's awesome.
Heck yeah.
And this buck is awesome. Awesome characteristics. His dude, I honestly think, in my opinion, he is a 3-year-old. He could possibly be a 2-year-old. I'm not joking. Yes. Dude, his
Really?
body is very small.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. But he had a very deceiving rack coming through the timber. And I think that played a role in me shooting him, thinking because his body was so small and I was comparing him to a doe, that's the only thing that really was around at the time. The last deer I saw, I don't want to make excuses because the buck does not deserve that. But it was not what I thought I shot. I thought I shot something bigger. It looked bigger coming through the timber. That doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a good looking buck.
Awesome.
It's a really good looking buck.
And the antlers don't mean shit. The memory will have of this will last forever.
Yep.
And the knowledge that I gained through how deer travel through the timber on this farm and how I set up on it will be something that I'm going to do again next season when I go to hunt this farm.
And it sounds like an awesome hunt.
Oh, dude, it was money. It's always good. I don't know how you are, but do you ever, I find myself questioning everything I do. I overthink. Should I hunt this stand? No. Should I hunt this stand? Yep. I know you're guilty of it too.
Oh yeah.
And it was good to go in and basically driving down to my main farm. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to this new farm tonight. I'm going to run and gun. I don't care. I'm going to do what we all want to do. Just read the sign, play the wind, play the terrain. And I did it and it worked. And I was so happy. Like, I'm happy that, and I'm happy that now I get to go hang with my kids for a while. Right. So this was an absolutely awesome rutcation, man. Just the deer that I saw, the deer that I, passed. I mean, a lot of it also had to do with on my other farm, I had trail camera pictures of all these deer. I knew who these deer were, right? I said, oh, well, yeah, I know him. I know he's a 3-year-old because I've looked at 1,000 pictures of him.
Right.
On this other farm, I didn't have any trail camera intel. So I didn't know anybody, right? So you mix that with what all happened, and it's just like, well, it's not what I thought it was, but that's okay. These things happen for a reason. And again, I just want to reiterate, I'm not disappointed in any way with the outcome of this. Yeah. I'm very happy. Very happy.
I'm happy for you, dude. It sounds like just a really a really incredible week. And to have it end like that, even though maybe it wasn't quite as old or as big as you thought, I think to your point, you put together an awesome hunt. You achieved, the goal of that night, which was to do all those things you mentioned, go into a new spot, figure it out, be within range of deer. And I'll tell you what, 95% of the people out there would probably give their left arm to ever shoot a deer like that. So you're doing all right, I'd say. You are doing all right. I can tell you there's at least one person here in this hotel room. His name rhymes with Birder, and he would shoot that buck all day.
So now here's something you got to think about. Okay, is I ate Chinese tonight. Okay.
Okay. I ate pizza.
Okay. The fortune cookie in my Chinese food tonight says, "A secret adventure is in store for you."
Ooh.
Okay.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So here's what I think needs to happen. I think on your way to North Dakota, you need to pick me up.
Man, I know when you texted me that. I wished we could do that. I hope we could do that, but this deer Holyfield has got me locked down.
Oh, buddy.
But
buddy. Kill him, and then let's go.
Man, if I can make it there still, I would love to swing through Iowa and pick you up.
I'm right on the way, man. I'm right on the way.
You are too, man. It would be awesome. Yeah, it's a bummer. The way things are going, I don't know if I'm going to get to use that tag at all. A wasted $250 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Not even get to hunt the state once. But that was kind of the...
You roll the dice when you plan all these things like that, right?
Yep, you do. And especially when you go into a season focused so much on one single deer.
Yeah.
And yeah, live and learn, and you've got to roll the punches and play the cards you've been dealt, right?
Right.
So
I just want to say one more thing to everybody who's listening out there. You know, we get on Instagram, we get on Facebook, and we see all these giant deer getting killed, and it's hard not to say, "Oh man, I really wish I had that. I want to do that. I want to kill a big buck." Ignore that. You have to hunt your hunt, and you have to hunt however style you see fit. Whether that's, I don't know, there's so many different ways to hunt, but what I'm getting at is don't compare your style and your deer to anybody else's, because they don't hunt the same as you. You don't hunt the same as them. Different states, different rules, different, there's so many other things that are out there, and it takes away from the true meaning of the hunt and actually in honoring the animal as well. So don't get caught up in the bullshit, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I think you need to shoot deer more often, Dan, because like you are on your game. You're on your A game tonight. You got a level of energy and you got some great points tonight. Like you're in it tonight, Dan. I like it. I feel like I'm out of it. I feel like I'm not like you brought the energy tonight. So thank you for doing that, Dan. You're keeping the podcast afloat today. You got some good stuff. I'm here just barely keeping my eyes open and thinking, where am I going to sit tomorrow?
Right.
But I think you make a really good point. I think it's really easy to get, and heck, I'm guilty of it sometimes too, even though I tell myself in the moment, don't do this, don't let it affect you. But sometimes when things aren't going your way and you pull up Facebook and see 10 people all killed giant bucks, it can be a little bit demoralizing at times, and you just got to fight that, and you got to your point, enjoy it, focus on your hunt, what you're doing. And that's what I've been trying to do, especially after what happened the other day when I blew my opportunity and I was kind of beating myself up. Right after that, I kind of realized, you know what? This whole year you've been so focused on just killing this deer, which, yes, I'm very goal-oriented. I like to achieve my goals. I like to work towards challenging goals. That's great and good. But when that starts to just cause you endless stress and take the fun out of it and all that kind of stuff, and I tend to have it. I am susceptible to this a lot because of how goal-oriented I am. Every year I'm getting too stressed about something, and I always have to end up like reminding myself to like chill out, enjoy it, and just take a deep breath. This isn't life or death. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do now. That's why I decided to go to Ohio. I wanted to, go to a new spot for a little bit, hang out with my buddies down here, just have a little fun for a little bit, because to be honest, I don't know how much fun I was having the last week and a half. It was more like, I don't know. I was just caught up in like the mission of it, and I was like focused on every little thing I did wrong or every little thing I needed to do. And sometimes you gotta say, you know what? I'm hunting because I enjoy hunting. Let's enjoy it. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's something we can all try to do. This time of year can get stressful because everyone we kind of think that the rut is when you got to get done. If I don't get it done now, if I don't kill a buck now, I'm not going to kill one. And you know what? Just enjoy it. It's a great time of year. Enjoy that time. Don't let it be all about if you kill or not. Actually enjoy the experience in the process. So that's what I'm going to try to do these next few days. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Because you're going to blink and it's over.
That's true. Very true. And we wait all year for it. So we might as well have fun while it's here. So
absolutely.
Well, I think on that note, man, we should shut it down because it's 10:30 at night and I got to wake up in like 4 hours to head back to a tree stand.
And now my question real quick before we leave is, are you in a hotel with one bed or two beds for you guys?
We were in a hotel with two beds.
Okay.
We do
Okay,
have,
cool.
We do have some separation.
You guys, put all your gear on one bed and then you two share a
Yeah,
bed?
of course. I thought that goes up. That goes up being said. Oh man, Josh Furter Hilliard is very much a part of this podcast episode, even though we didn't let him actually talk.
Well, I tell you what, if there's one person I would ever want to spoon with in a hotel bedroom, it would be old Josh Furter.
I could. He's just over here just shaking his head.
And that is how we end it.
And that is how we end it. So let's shut this one down. All you guys out there hunting, good luck. And so with that, we will wrap this episode up. Before we go, though, big thank you to our partners at Sitka Gear, Yeti Coolers, Matthews Archery, Maven Optics, the Whitetail Institute of North America, Trophy Ridge, and Huntera Maps. And finally, of course, thank you all for listening. Thanks for being here with us. Like I said a second ago, good luck in the tree, and until next time, stay wired to hunt.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.